Did I get a thumbs up from tech? Rin? Do I have a thumbs up? Okay. Mary? Yeah.
Good morning. In the spirit of women's suffrage that we are celebrating the history of today, I will be playing a piece of music by Amy Beach. She wrote this in 1922, 2 years after women got the vote. And even though she was an established composer by the time she married her physician husband, he made her sign a contract that she wouldn't teach, that she wouldn't perform in public. He didn't want it to detract from his career. Nonetheless, she made quite a mark. This song is directly transcribed bird song. She went out with her little music paper and listened to the song of the hermit thrush. And what I will be playing with my right hand for the first part of it is exactly what the hermit thrush sang, and then she goes into her own take on it, and then the hermit thrush comes back. So enjoy.
Good morning. Our centering thought is by Tom Bilote. We were the first denomination to recognize the ordination of a woman. It was these Unitarian and Universalist congregations that recognized the religious leadership of women and that the women's suffrage movement was born. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Olympia Brown are our religious forebears, but our congregations played a role as well, opening their doors for the suffragettes to organize inside and deliver stirring speeches. In standing for equal rights for women, we sided with love. Welcome to Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Nancy Merrill, and it's my privilege to be your service associate today. We are a liberal religious community bound together by shared principles that are drawn from world religions, humanist teachings, nature and science, philosophy, and personal practices. We are a religion of love and inclusion. The mission of Summit is to commit ourselves to building a more compassionate, just, and sustainable world. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to Summit and would like to know more about us, we invite you to go to our website, summituuf.org, click on the Visitors button, and fill out our online connection card. Someone will follow up with you. We have several announcements this morning. Pastor Casey, Mary Carter Vale, Al Mork, Sandy Bernstein, and Pam Williams. Did I miss anybody? Okay.
Good morning, folks. I just want to remind you that today is the Ministers Book Group at 12:15 in the library. We're discussing an Indigenous people's history of the United States. The restrooms available to us today, library, office, salon. Pretend these ones over here don't exist, only the ones on that side. And there was an email that went out from me this weekend about the upcoming worship training with our Sunday services team. I said it was on a Sunday. It's not on a Sunday. It's on Saturday, March 30th. So the date was right, but the day was wrong. So just wanted to make sure I cleared that up. Thanks, folks.
Hi, good morning. Just wanted to give you a couple updates on what's happening in RE because the shelter is in our space. We're outside today, and we're also going to be outside next week just because of the memorial service Saturday, just to relieve the pressure on Mark to have everything spotless. It's a lot of work. So I sent out an invitation for memorial service for celebration of life for my husband next Saturday. If you got it and it was difficult to read, I resent it because there was some glitch with our program. And then finally, we have our Easter service coming up at the end of this month, which is an animal blessing. So we're going to do the spring egg hunt the Sunday before. So the 24th will be the spring egg hunt, because we were thinking eggs, pets, kids running around might be a little much. So next Sunday we will be having an egg hunt here, and it's going to be kind of cool. I'll tell you more about it next week. You do not need to bring eggs. You do not need to bring eggs.
But on Easter, bring your pets.
But you could bring your pets or pet pictures on Easter. You could bring people who want to look for eggs.
All of our eggs are frozen.
Okay, frozen eggs. So we're not bringing any frozen eggs. That was a good one, Tom. So the egg hunt will be next Sunday. And the eggs won't be frozen. We're going to use wooden eggs this year. So it's the week after. We'll do cleanup the week after, because Mark always finds eggs in the shrubbery after the egg hunt. So the dogs or critters can look. Peanut will help. That's it for me. Thank you.
Top of the morning. I have my Catholic green and my Protestant orange.
Cover all bases,
yes,
right?
yes. So I hope we have a slide that Rin's about to put up to tell you where we stand with the generosity campaign. Here it comes. All right, so we're at 70% after 2 weeks, which is pretty darn good. Number of pledge, no, this is the old one.
That's
Yeah.
50%.
Yeah, well, I'll go for it. So we are at 70%. We have 39 pledge units in, and the average pledge is a little below 5,000. So, we're hoping to get to 100% within the next 2 weeks. As Pam said before, this is the more difficult part. Even though we have perhaps half the congregation that we're hoping to still get pledges from. Yeah, at this point, it's pretty small, but, we hope it'll grow. The slide, there we go, yeah, question.
Is that 5,000 a month or a year?
A year, yes. But we're happy to take anyone that would like to do 5,000 a month, yes.
We'll have a chair.
Right. So Pam has the box if anyone would like to donate today. We already got 4 or 5 new ones.
This morning
Yes.
already, 4 or 5. We have more pledge forms in the back. If you're ready, if you did 1, 2, 1, thoughtfully consider what summit means for you. Oh, I'm such a loud mouth, I don't need it, do I? But anyway. Okay, for Zoom. Oh, okay. Okay, 1 is thoughtfully consider your pledge. 2, understand Summit's need. And then, finally, 3, make a pledge on the back that says, make a pledge that will make you feel good. Okay, what does that mean? Because I need to explain that some of us, we thoughtfully considered what Summit means, and it means a great deal. 2, we understand the need. We have a staff that needs to be paid. But 3, when it comes to it, we'd want to give much more, but we can't. What we're asking is that you make a pledge that you're willing and able to make. That should make you feel good. That's it.
I guess I'm next, huh? Top of the morning to you all. Yes. Oh. Well, the shelter, we're half done, and it's going very well. Had a lot of turnout. Thank you very much. You people are great. As always, have really given us a lot of support. And I want to also thank Liz, and the thank you comes from Liz and Dan and Melody for all they've done. And and there still are a few slots to be filled if you take the time and care to go online and see that what's available. And other than that, what can I say? Really an incredible bunch this year. Very good.
Thank you. You're awesome.
Are there any more announcements? We acknowledge that our fellowship resides on unceded Kumeyaay land, and that for more than 10,000 years this land has been, and continues to be, home to the Kumeyaay people. We recognize the violent history of colonization in California and honor the legacy of the continuing presence of the Kumeyaay Nation. Mary will be lighting our chalice this morning. Our chalice lighting is by Beatrice Hitchcock. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It is an everlasting flame for this community. It offers its warmth to those who are cold. It provides light to those who would see. It purifies and transforms this sanctuary into a sacred space, this congregation into a sacred community. May its flame burn true and high and strong. Please stand for our UU hymn and aspiration. This is our aspiration.
I got it. Take care.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Pastor Casey Marie Pandell, and I'm the minister here at Summit. Whether it is your first visit or your 5,000th visit, even on this St. Patrick's Day, you are whole, you are holy, you are loved, and you are so welcome here. And I would like to invite Margot Mariana up to the chancel to read our reading today, which are some of her own words.
Ah, poetry. Let us remember that we are celebrating this month a time of transformation. Transform. Moving through old forms, shedding the old, awakening and rebirthing into the new. It is a time of evolution of the spirit, I believe, and this poem was written in celebration of letting go, taking in the new, and of the divine feminine, the power to expand our ability to receive and to see it equally as service. I like to say receptive attention. So this poem is called Lines, L-I-N-E-S. They come, these lines, gifts from the scribes of time. They come, first ripples in the fine placenta weave, the circles and folds that let us move, find our shapes, make a vessel for light to shine, and braid heaven into earth, blue-green coils of veins routing luminous ways to pulse in our body home. They come, these lines, spinning like threads to trace history into our sheets of flesh, to shape the turns and forms we take, to carry us from self into others, and they into us. They come to soften a porcelain stare, Smooth the jaws squared by angry words. Help us wear the tributaries of tears and lift the face to smile. They come to hold us slow into ways, to greet ourselves arriving. And when in our unfolding years we shed the mesh of layers, become again the fine thread, they spin us into one grand spiral back to our return. Thank you. Blessings be.
You're good. You can just hang out. And please join us in rising in mind, body, or spirit as we sing our first hymn today, hymn 109 in our gray hymnals as we come marching, marching. It might be one that we're not familiar with, so if you can get one of those gray hymnals to help guide you, that would probably be a great idea. I always like when we give it a good old college try. And I want to thank Barbara especially because I think that was the one this week where I was lost for another hymn, and Barbara was the one who said, this is actually a hymn about women's suffrage, which I wouldn't have noticed if she hadn't said anything. So thank you, Barbara. Our joys and concerns are a time where we can share the things that are too big and too tender or too joyful to hold alone. Our joys and concerns can be emailed or texted to me throughout the week, or can be handwritten up near the chancel on a Sunday morning. And whether there is a joy or sorrow to be spoken or not, all are welcome to light a candle as moved. I have two today. The first is from Michelle, who reports that Miles is home and getting stronger every day, but that there's still some progress. And she just wanted to reiterate again that everyone's support of meals and cards has been so incredibly helpful during what has been a really difficult time. And she's just Thanks everyone again and again for being so kind and helpful. And then I have a joy and a sorrow from Erin Doherty, who says that today is her father Chuck's birthday, an Irish birthday for a humble Irish guy. We hope that today is a day of fond remembrance for you, Erin. And we know not every joy or concern in this room has been shared today, whether spoken or unspoken. We hold you in our hearts. And I would like to invite Mary Carter Vale up for our Time for All Ages.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Putting on my little wreath. I know it's St. Patrick's Day, but it is also the week, a few days before the spring equinox. The spring equinox is coming. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. And I don't know if you all noticed that finally we have enough light at the end of the evening, because the lighting is starting to expand. But what's happening right now is that the days and the nights are almost equal. And something happens at my house every spring equinox, almost like clockwork, and that is the hooded oriole shows up. And yesterday morning, I heard him, and I looked up, and he was up in the tree scouting out the palms, which one he's going to build his nest in. And it's something that I just have been very observant about the birds that show up. I have a hooded oriole, I have an Allen's hummingbird and a Rufus hummingbird that are trying to bully all my Annas because they all want the nectar. But this oriole, I almost set the clock by him showing up. And this is the male. There's also the female. I saw her too. But they usually have multiple couples, and they usually don't show up until around the 20th. So they're a little early this year, which is really wonderful. So the spring equinox is a time, we don't really have those dramatic seasons here like I had growing up in Maine, where this would be the advent of mud season right now. This is when the snow would melt and the road would turn to mud. We do get mud season where I live in Ramona simply because of rain and I live on a dirt road. But we don't really see the seasons as dramatically here, right? But as you've having lived here for many years or growing up here, sometimes those are very subtle changes, like a bird returning. So how do we focus on the seasons? We need to pay attention and be observant. And that can be transformative. Transformation is our theme. So really, I'm inviting everybody to really look at the world around you. Look at what's happening. Look at the awakening. The hills are all green right now. That mustard's getting ready to take off and turn them yellow, one of our lovely invasive plants. But start paying attention to all the beauty that you see, and you will see, for me, it fills my it's a spiritual practice to look at what's happening in nature. And we do it with the kids all the time, but I think sometimes adults forget. Be observant, see the beauty around you, and look out for the orioles. Last year, we had some that were hanging out in the Mexican fan palms right here, right by Summit. But if you see, this is my Mexican fan palm, and these palms have these big fan leaves, and the oriole peels little strings off of it and weaves a nest from it. So they're the trees that they really like. So I didn't have a picture of a nest, but I brought you one of my birds. So be observant, pay attention to the transformation that's happening around you, and find it in yourself. So that's my story for you today. And we're going to go out to the garden. We have a whole wagon full of greenery for St. Patrick's Day, I guess I will, or for the spring. So we're going to head off with our song. Ready? Person is worth
please rise in mind, body, or spirit to sing our next hymn, hymn 1007 or 1007 in the teal hymnal, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. In the teal hymnal, the paperback one. 1007.
One little comment on the words on this one. Can you guys hear me? There's, the teal hymnal has something a little bit different at the very end than what's on our slides. And if you look at the slide right now where it says there's a river flowing in my soul, that's what the last bit of it is we're going to do, there's a river flowing, and it says repeat as desired. And we're just going to let the river flow and see how that goes. And then I'll kind of slow down and then we'll go over There's a River Flowing in My Soul after we've done all 3 verses. So we'll see if we can get that river to flow.
Please join me for a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection while that river keeps flowing, and as I read words from Frances Ellen Watkins Harper entitled Songs for the People. Let me make the songs for the people, songs for the young and the old, songs to stir like a battle cry wherever they are sung. Not for the clashing of sabers, for carnage, nor for strife, but songs to thrill the hearts of men with more abundant life. Let me make the songs for the weary amid life's fever and fret, till hearts shall relax their tension and careworn brows forget. Let me sing for little children before their footsteps stray, sweet anthems of love and duty to float o'er life's highway. I would sing for the poor and the aged when shadows dim their sight, of the bright and restful mansions where there shall be no night. Our world so worn and weary needs music pure and strong to hush the jangle and discords of sorrow, pain, and wrong. Music to soothe all its sorrow till war and crime shall cease and the hearts of men grow tender. Girdle the world with peace. Amen. And were all women as sure of their wants as I was, the result would be the same. The difficulty is to get them to the point from which they shall naturally develop self-respect and learn self-help. Those are some words from Unitarian Margaret Fuller, and while I don't love her entire meaning there, when I think about it, given the context of history and how unusual it would have been for a woman to do a lot of things that she wanted to do without someone else telling her she could, I understand Fuller to mean if most women had the privilege I had, they would see themselves capable of wonderful things. Margaret Fuller is one of many Unitarian ancestors, a journalist, editor, and translator at a time when women were kept largely concerned with only the ins and outs of household life. Fuller, at the time, was a staunch women's rights activist. With a father who had encouraged her to be as intellectually astute as possible, it is no surprise that she sought the same for other women. How thrilled I'm sure she would have been to have seen Reverend Olympia Brown preach, just once. It's no secret that today's sermon is historically focused, so I hope you all came caffeinated and with your thinking caps on. Olympia Brown is one of the few women I'm really excited to introduce you all to today, women who are pretty important not only to us as far as our own Unitarian Universalist history goes, but as a people who have sought and continue to seek liberation for all. These women were lucky enough to be theologically connected to such remarkable women who helped change the world. The fight for women's suffrage in America was a long one, spanning well over 50 years and multiple generations. We know that power is something that is not often granted to the people who don't have it. Unfortunately, doing so is too often against the nature of being in power. As we have seen over the centuries, if someone wants power, they must demand it, and such is the case for women's rights. In this instance today, the right to vote. The phrase, if you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself, comes to mind, and the women I will discuss today did exactly that. The oldest of 4 children, religion and education were critical to Olympia Brown's upbringing, and were something of the kindling of her journey. Her first attempts at higher education were less than stellar. At both Mount Holyoke Female Seminary and Antioch College, the overarching idea was that women were less capable than men, and that constantly dogged at her heels. However, she met every challenge head-on, working diligently and maybe a little defiantly to reach the standards required of men, which far exceeded the expectations of any female student. After many attempts and almost as many rejections, Brown was eventually accepted to the Theological School of St. Lawrence, then one of 3 Universalist seminaries. Despite the president's clear views that women had no business in ministry, and opposition from students, teachers, and teachers' wives alike, Brown graduated in 1863, the first woman to ever do so from a respected seminary. Now, despite the Universalist Association's president feeling that women were ill-suited for ministry, that same year, Brown became the first woman ever to be officially ordained with denominational support. Antoinette Brown Blackwell had been ordained 10 years previous, but only locally. So that denominational support is a really important piece. Universalists were the first faith to ordain a woman. Brown spent time preaching in various locations and became a well-known orator with much rapidity. Her first pastorate, or what we would call today a settlement, was with the congregation at Weymouth Landing in Massachusetts, where she served for a number of years, then moved on to 2 other congregations before taking to the road for a summer at the behest of Lucy Stone and Stone's husband, Henry Blackwell, Antoinette's brother-in-law. It was a summer spent using her voice to be politically inclined in the fight for women's suffrage. While the ministry is still where her heart lay, she would spend the rest of her career championing women's rights, very specifically women's right to vote. There are multiple documented speeches of her insistence that women's rights deserved attention, sometimes in fair opposition to Frederick Douglass. While he maintained the importance of women's rights, he saw them as secondary to the needs of black men. The speeches against each other were seldom polite. Brown was integral to a number of local and national women's suffrage groups, including being offered the chance to work alongside notable suffragettes Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, which she turned down in favor of parish ministry. She also served as the president of the Federal Suffrage Association from 1903 to 1920. And she would go on to march in favor of ratifying the 19th Amendment when she was 85 years old. That specificity of Brown's right to vote is important when we consider noted Unitarian who agreed with her, as I mentioned, Lucy Stone, who was an abolitionist and nationally known suffragette. One of 9 children born into a farming family and clearly brighter and more astute than her brothers, her words, not mine, Stone was frustrated by the opportunities that were not afforded to women, particularly in terms of encouragement towards education. She was a teacher for a spell and attended Mount Holyoke as well as Oberlin College, and much like Brown, she faced numerous obstacles on her path to education, including being barred the opportunity to speak in public, which she was drawn to. Despite it all, she graduated in 1847, the first woman in the state of Massachusetts to hold a degree. And even still, professional opportunities were few and far between for women. However, she was offered a position by William Lloyd Garrison with his American Anti-Slavery Society. Having a zeal for abolition work attributed to her father, she was well suited to field work. Despite records of her being heckled, as many politically active women at the time were, and even once attacked by a mob, Stone was wildly popular as a speaker, and even out-earned many of her male counterparts. By 1850, she organized the first Women's Rights Convention, which included international acclaim for her speech at the event. She would then spend the next 5 years full-time on the lecture circuit. She married Unitarian Henry Blackwell, brother to America's first and second female physicians, Elizabeth and Emily Blackwell, who thought notably less of women in general than their sister-in-law did. But their marriage was one of an egalitarian nature, with Stone being the first American woman to ever keep her maiden name, with the clear ideals of Stone's right to live her life as she chose. Their daughter Alice Stone Blackwell would later join the cause. Stone continued to fight for the vote, championing the ratification of the 14th Amendment, giving black men the right to vote. This was more of a moderate position that she and her American Women's Suffrage Association held, which was pretty fair opposition to the Anthony and Cady Stanton-led National Women's Suffrage Association, where one claimed the right to vote for all, the other was equality for women in all aspects of life, not just the vote. Indeed, it was this opposition of viewpoints that led to a giant splinter in the suffrage movement, with Stone seeking universal voting and the other seeking full equality for women. The split would last for 20 years. Which brings us to Alice Stone Blackwell, who was the only surviving child of her parents. Decidedly less is known about her than those mentioned before, but it is worth noting that the daughter of such prominent reformers in relation to families of important standing at first wanted nothing to do with reform work. Exceptionally well educated, she graduated the president of her class from Boston University in 1881 at 24 years old. Before she reached 30, her name was alongside her parents in their paper, The Women's Journal, and by 1893, she was the paper's editor. A handful of her translations and writings would go on to be published during her lifetime. But the most notable story about Stone Blackwell is the role that she played in reuniting the two suffrage factions, with help from Harriet Stanton Blatch, the daughters of two of the most prominent women in opposition. The work to reunite the sides was long, arduous, and not without issue, but in the end, the pair were successful in convincing the factions that together was better than separate, and together they helped form the new National American Women's Suffrage Association in 1890. They would work tirelessly for another 30 years before the passing and the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Lucy Stone would never see a day that she could vote, dying in 1893. Reverend Olympia Brown would vote in 1920, the year before her death. Alice Stone Blackwell is responsible for considerable knowledge of her mother's work, having written and published her biography in 1930, and who was also a humanitarian in her own right, working for the benefit of the Armenian refugee community. The National American Women's Suffrage Association is still in existence today, but with a slightly less difficult name, the League of Women Voters. As you can see, there is a remarkable amount of firsts in our Unitarian and Universalist heritages. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the same level of zeal is very much alive in our faith community today. Our current president is the first BIPOC woman to hold the office, not to mention the first religious educator to ever do so. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list of Unitarian, Universalist, or adjacent women that were integral to the cause of women's suffrage. It says nothing for the likes of women such as Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, some of whose work I read today. Harper was a free-born Black woman, abolitionist, activist for women's rights, and a well-respected lecturer in her time. Nor does it give credence to more well-known names such as Anthony and Katie Stanton, who are mentioned here more briefly than perhaps they deserve. It also does not examine the men who were allies in the fight. What this list does do is show the deeply ingrained history of liberation within our faith community. We don't get our passion for social justice out of thin air, and it is not a new part of our movement. Indeed, it is foundational to it. I also hope that this shows that we as Unitarian Universalists don't rest on our laurels. These women demonstrated perseverance, strength, ingenuity, and talent. They seldom took no for an answer. And we know all too well that the strides these women helped make are not easily won, nor are the hard-fought battles they have fought in recent years and continue to fight today. We know these battles are not over. With the ramifications of the reversal of Roe v. Wade, with politicians stating they want to go back to the days before women could vote, we see the rights of women and others being attacked in the political sphere with alarming regularity. Additionally, it is critical that we remember that there is documented proof that women across the board still are not equal in this country. While we recognize that there is a large gender pay gap, statistically, white women will fare better than their Black, Indigenous, or people of color counterparts every single time. While there is a 20.4% wage gap between men and women, according to the Human Rights Watch, that gap is even larger for women of color, with Black and Latina and Indigenous women being exponentially more likely to work lower-paying service jobs than white or Asian women. There's further documented evidence that women are ignored with disturbing frequency when it comes to health care, with our BIPOC sisters more likely to become ill or die from a lack of treatment. And of course, we know the pandemic highlighted further inequalities of gender, with women leaving the workforce at much higher rates than men. The numbers of women impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic were at higher rates not just in the United States, but globally. Not only were women more likely to suffer the financial impacts, and in many cases still are, but higher numbers of women work in healthcare, and they were put at a greater risk for contracting the disease. There is always work to be done. The work of those who have come before is always a part of our history to be grateful for and should serve as a reminder that seldom is power given, and even less so is power guaranteed. The biographies given today are mere snapshots of decades of work spanning lifetimes. It's up to each of us to continue the work for equity in every walk of life. It is one thing to say we are Unitarian Universalists. It is another thing entirely to show up as one in the world. You may have noticed that this sermon is less spiritually inclined than usual, and that is by design, because living out our social justice principles is a practical representation of the faith we profess to live. The deep inner individual spiritual work has its place, but so does the history, far more than I could ever include here. But it's always worth remembering where we've been, so that we can see clearly where we must go next. So may it be, and amen.
We are a fellowship supported entirely by the voluntary generosity of our members and friends, and we greatly appreciate our faithful pledgers who continue to keep up their monthly contributions. It is now easier than ever to contribute to our virtual plate today. The link can be found in the chat box and will take you directly to the donation location. And now we will gratefully accept your generous donations during the musical interlude.
So in recognition that today is St. Patrick's Day, this is a nocturne by John Field, an Irish composer. He was writing nocturnes before Chopin and was really quite influential. It's beautiful, enjoy.
please rise in mind, body, or spirit to sing our closing hymn, number 201 in the gray hymnal, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. If you look at the lower right-hand corner of the page of that song, it says Sojourner Irregular. That song was actually named for Sojourner Truth. That's just a little fun fact for today. We know that the work is never ending, and I don't tell you that as a way to get you to think, oh God, something else. We know that the work we do in the world matters. We can see the echoes of it from the stories of these women that you heard about today. And we know there are countless others who were involved in that same work whom we will never know about. And sometimes I hope that that's the same for each of us. Sometimes it doesn't matter if we are remembered by name, but by deed. So this week, as you recall these stories, I ask you to remember that the little deeds that we do together can have unending impacts for centuries to come. Amen, shalom, salam, namaste, and blessed be. Go now in peace. May the light within you be a blessing to the world.
Closing circle song. Ah,
We're working on it.
okay.
Margot is going to extinguish the chalice for us today. Our closing words are by Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. After our closing circle song, we will take a short break and reconvene at the sound of the singing bowl for our community gathering. And now our closing circle song.